The rain had barely stopped when Adrian Cole stepped out of his silver car, still on an important phone call, still annoyed, still convinced that this visit to his late mother's old house was nothing more than a formality. A billionaire like him had no reason to come back to this quiet neighborhood, except for the strange message he had received that morning. A message from a woman he had never heard of, a maid claiming she had washed his mother, and that his mother would walk again. At first, Adrian thought it was some kind of scam, maybe even a cruel joke. His mother had passed away 2 years ago. There was no walking again, no miracle waiting in the shadows. So why did those words still cling to him like fog? He stepped through the gate, and the air felt heavier, almost like the old house was holding its breath. The trees rustled softly, and the wind carried a smell he had not sensed since childhood. Soap, warm water, and lavender oil. His mother used to love that scent. He shook off the strange feeling and walked toward the front door, noticing lights glowing inside. He hadn't left them on. No one should be here. His heartbeat quickened, but he forced himself to stay calm. When he opened the door, he expected dust, silence, and emptiness. Instead, he saw movement. Slow, careful movement. A woman in a faded uniform stood in the hallway, gently wringing water from a cloth. Her hands were trembling, but her eyes looked steady, too steady. She glanced at him as if she had been expecting this exact moment. "You came," she whispered. Adrian didn't speak. His throat tightened. This must be the maid who had sent the message. She looked older than he had imagined, with lines across her face that spoke of long nights, heavy sorrow, and perhaps secrets that weighed more than she could carry. "I know what you think," she said softly, placing the damp cloth into a wooden bowl. "But I promise I'm not joking." Adrian forced out a breath. "Whatever you think you saw, whatever you think you mean, my mother is gone." The maid shook her head slowly. She needed to be washed first, the way she used to be washed, with gentleness, with care. He stared at her, confused, irritated, and suddenly a little afraid. "Why would you say something like that? What exactly did you do?" The maid didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked deeper into the house, motioning for him to follow. Adrian hesitated at the doorway, unsure whether to step forward or turn around and leave this strange encounter behind. But curiosity tugged at him with a force he couldn't fight. He moved slowly, feeling the floor creak under his feet. The hallway lights blinked once, twice, as if reacting to his presence. The maid stopped beside a door he had not opened in years, his mother's old bedroom. Her hand rested on the doorknob, pale and shaking. "Before I show you," she whispered, "you must promise not to scream." Adrian's breath caught. The room beyond the door remained silent, but he sensed someone, or something, was on the other side. And when the maid finally turned the knob, Adrian felt his entire world tilt. But what he saw inside is the part that no one was prepared for. The door opened with the slowest creak, the kind that makes the air shift before the sound even reaches your ears. Adrian froze at the threshold, his eyes adjusting to the dim room. It looked exactly the same as he remembered. His mother's old furniture, her floral curtains, the framed photograph still leaning against the dresser. Nothing had changed, and yet something felt terribly out of place. A bowl of warm water sat beside the bed, steam drifting into the air. Fresh towels were neatly folded. The scent of lavender was stronger here, almost overwhelming. The maid stepped inside first, keeping her voice low. "I didn't touch anything except what needed to be touched. Your mother's room is sacred. I know that." Adrian didn't respond. His mind raced back to the strange message she had sent. "I'll wash your mom, and she'll walk." Those words echoed again, louder now. He scanned the room, trying to make sense of the scene. The bed covers were pulled back, as if someone had just been lying there. The pillow looked slightly indented. His pulse picked up. "Who was here?" he demanded. The maid hesitated. "I was—" He shook his head. "No, someone else. Someone you're not telling me about." She clasped her hands together, as if trying to gather courage. "I need you to understand something before you see the rest." She walked over to the dresser, picking up a small framed photo. It was a picture Adrian hadn't seen in years. His mother, smiling softly, standing near the garden in this very house. He swallowed hard. "I was her caretaker," the maid continued. Before she passed, she trusted me with things no one else knew, things she didn't want written or spoken outside these walls. She believed in signs, in rituals, in ways of healing that people today laugh at. Her eyes softened. She believed some things could be undone if handled with love. Adrian frowned, frustration rising. What does that have to do with washing? With walking? With you calling me as if you were still alive? The maid didn't answer directly. Instead, she walked toward the window and gently pulled the curtain aside. Outside, the garden looked oddly well kept. Flowers trimmed, grass freshly cut, as if someone had been caring for it recently. Despite the house sitting empty, Adrian felt a chill creep down his spine. I've been coming here every day, she said quietly. Not to live, just to keep things the way she would have wanted. Why? Adrian asked. Why keep a dead woman's house ready? She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. Because she asked me to. She told me her time wasn't finished. Adrian stepped back. Disbelief etched across his face. You expect me to believe she predicted you would revive her somehow? The maid didn't blink. Not revive. Restore. Adrian opened his mouth to argue, but something caught his attention. A faint sound. A soft shuffle. It came from the far corner of the room, behind the wardrobe. He glanced at the maid, but she didn't look surprised. In fact, her shoulders sagged, as if she had been waiting for that sound. What was that? Adrian whispered. The maid took a slow breath. That is why I called you. Adrian felt his heartbeat thudding in his ears. The sound came again, this time clearer. A gentle tapping, like a foot brushing against the floor. He took a step closer to the wardrobe, his breath in, his mind refusing to accept what he might find behind it. The maid didn't move to stop him. Adrian, she said softly, whatever you're expecting, it won't be that simple. He placed his hand on the wardrobe door, feeling the faint vibration from the other side. Then silence. Complete, heavy silence that made his skin prickle. And just when he thought the sound had stopped, something on the other side shifted again, slow, deliberate, almost like someone trying to stand. Adrian's fingers hovered on the wardrobe handle, but he couldn't bring himself to pull it open. The sound behind it was too real, too human, too impossible. For a moment, he wondered if his mind was playing tricks on him. Memories mixing with grief, twisting into illusions. But the maid's calm expression told him she wasn't imagining anything. She had heard it before. She had seen something he hadn't, and she wasn't afraid of it. The tapping stopped, replaced by a faint rustle, like clothing brushing against wood. Adrian stepped back, unable to decide whether he should run or demand answers. His chest tightened. There's someone behind there, he whispered. The maid nodded slowly. Yes. Who? He snapped, frustration and fear rising together. She looked toward the wardrobe with something like sadness in her eyes. Someone who shouldn't be able to move at all. Adrian's breath caught. Her words made no sense, but the conviction in her voice was undeniable. He turned away from the wardrobe for a moment, needing space from whatever stood behind it. His eyes landed again on the warm water bowl, the towels, the faint smell of lavender. The whole room felt like it had been prepared for someone who wasn't supposed to return. He swallowed. Explain it. All of it. The maid folded her hands tightly, as if holding on to something invisible. Your mother wasn't afraid of death, she said softly, but she feared leaving things unfinished, especially things with you. She believed her spirit would stay restless unless her body was cared for properly, even after. Adrian shook his head. This is madness. You're talking about rituals, spirits, washing, like some old story meant to comfort grieving people. She looked directly at him. You don't understand because you weren't here when she needed you. That hit him harder than he expected. He turned away, jaw tightening. He knew he hadn't visited often. He had buried himself in business, success, luxury, anything to avoid facing the final years of her illness. But hearing it spoken aloud still felt like a punch. Before he could respond, a new sound came from behind the wardrobe, this time a soft exhale, like someone waking up. Adrian's pulse raced. Stop. Don't tell me you believe my mother is standing behind that piece of furniture. The maid didn't deny it. She walked past him, placing her hand gently on the wardrobe door. I believe the body remembers. I believe love remembers. And sometimes the bond between a mother and her child refuses to break. Adrian stepped closer, lowering his voice. What did you do to her? I did what she asked me to. I washed her. I cared for her. I spoke to her like she never left. He stared at her, trying to process the meaning behind her words. But her body was never taken far. The maid interrupted quietly. She wanted to remain in her home. She requested it before she passed. You didn't know because you were away. A cold wave ran down his spine. He felt the floor shift beneath him. That's impossible. She was buried. I attended her funeral. The maid's expression didn't change. The world saw what it needed to see. Adrian felt dizzy. What are you saying? There was a coffin. There was a burial. There was, she agreed. But not everything in the coffin was what people believed. Adrian stumbled back, gripping the edge of the bed for balance. His mind raced through every memory of that day. Had he looked closely? Had he truly seen her face? Or had he just stood there, numb, going through motions expected of a grieving son? Before he could ask anything else, the wardrobe moved. Just a small shift, barely noticeable, but enough to make Adrian stiffen. The maid didn't flinch. Instead, she whispered to the wardrobe, as if speaking to someone fragile. It's all right. He's here now. Adrian's breath caught. Who are you talking to? The maid slowly stepped aside, leaving Adrian facing the wardrobe again. The silence stretched, heavy and expectant. And then a hand, thin, pale, slipped out from a narrow gap between the wardrobe and the wall. Adrian's heart stopped. The hand wasn't reaching blindly. It was reaching for him. Adrian's breath caught in his throat as the hand paused in the air, trembling slightly. His mind screamed that this was impossible, that he must be imagining it. But every instinct in his body told him otherwise. The pale fingers curled slowly, beckoning him closer, and his feet moved forward despite his terror. He couldn't tear his eyes away. His mother's room, the lavender scent, the carefully folded towels, the warm water. Everything suddenly felt alive, like the past and present were colliding in a way he couldn't explain. The maid stood silently behind him, her gaze steady, unblinking. Go on, she said softly. She's waiting. Adrian's pulse pounded so hard he thought it might burst through his chest. He reached the wardrobe, trembling, and saw a figure emerge, frail, shrouded in shadow, yet unmistakably familiar. His mother, or something that looked like her. Her eyes, pale but piercing, met his, and in that instant, Adrian felt every memory of her. The warmth, the laughter, the quiet evenings in the garden, flooding back like a tide. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough to silence his disbelief. The hand that had reached out to him was steady now, unwavering, almost desperate for him to take it. Adrian's fingers brushed against hers, and a shock ran through him, not of electricity, but of recognition. Something beyond explanation. The room seemed to pulse around them. The walls, the furniture, even the faint scent of lavender felt charged. Adrian wanted to step back, to flee, but he couldn't. A voice whispered in his mind, soft but urgent. She's waiting for you to understand. The maid moved closer, placing a hand lightly on Adrian's shoulder. Don't be afraid. She isn't here to harm you. She needs you to see, to feel what was left undone. Adrian's eyes darted around, noticing details he hadn't seen before. The floorboards were polished, the bed perfectly made, the framed photos slightly turned toward the wardrobe, as if guiding him. The warmth of the water bowl, the gentle steam, even the faint sound of dripping somewhere in the corner. All of it was purposeful, intentional, a scene meticulously prepared for him, and him alone. A sudden movement behind his mother made him tense again. Something shifted in the shadows of the room, a silhouette taller, darker, watching. He couldn't tell if it was real or a trick of the dim light. His chest tightened. Every instinct screamed danger, yet he couldn't look away from the figure before him. Adrian, the maid said, her voice low but firm, what you see is only part of the truth. You need to understand why she waited, why she chose this moment for you. His mother's eyes flickered toward the wardrobe, then back to him, and Adrian felt a strange pull in his chest, a mix of fear, sorrow, and something else he couldn't name. The tapping he had heard earlier returned, this time faster, more insistent, like a heartbeat echoing from the shadows. "Listen," the maid whispered, almost trembling herself. "Time is short. You have to act before it's too late." The shadow behind the wardrobe shifted again, taller now, closer, and a low, almost imperceptible sound reached Adrian's ears. It wasn't a voice, but a warning, a presence filled with urgency. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as if pressing down on him from all sides. Adrian's hand remained in his mother's, his legs weak, heart racing, mind torn between disbelief and an impossible hope. The tension in the room was unbearable, stretching every second into a lifetime. And then, just as he opened his mouth to ask the question that had been burning inside him from the moment he stepped into the house, the wardrobe creaked wider, revealing something moving in the shadows, something that made Adrian's blood run cold. He couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. He could only watch as a figure emerged, step by slow step, drawing the air and his sanity into a whirlpool of suspense. The moment was electric, the air thick with anticipation. Everything he had believed, everything he had doubted, was about to collide, but what waited in the shadows wasn't yet ready to reveal itself. And Adrian's next choice could change everything. Adrian's eyes widened as the shadow finally stepped fully into the dim light of the room. It wasn't his mother, at least not in the way he had imagined. The figure was tall, almost unnaturally still, wearing the faint outline of a uniform he couldn't place. And then a second realization struck him. The face was familiar, too familiar. Someone from his past, someone he had trusted, someone he thought was gone. He stumbled back, his heart pounding. What are you doing here?" he asked, voice trembling. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it moved closer, deliberately, silently, its presence radiating a cold intensity that made the air feel heavier. The tension in the room tightened around him like a vice, and Adrian felt an icy grip of fear crawling up his spine. The maid stepped in front of him, her face pale but resolute. "You weren't supposed to see this yet," she whispered. "But now that you have, you must understand the full truth." Adrian shook his head, trying to make sense of the impossible. "I don't understand. My mother, she isn't alone," the maid interrupted, her voice barely audible over the silence that seemed to thicken in the room. "There are things, people, tied to her passing that no one ever told you about." Adrian's stomach twisted. He thought he had prepared himself for grief, for memory, maybe even for strange rituals, but he hadn't been prepared for this. Someone else, someone who had been part of a hidden story in his family's past, was here, watching, waiting, and controlling more than he could have imagined. The air vibrated with unspoken secrets, and Adrian felt as if the walls themselves were closing in. The figure took a step closer, and in that instant, Adrian noticed a small object clutched in their hand. A key? Or something else? His mind raced. It was metallic, cold, and it glinted in the faint light. He had no idea what it unlocked, but the way the figure held it suggested danger or revelation. "You need to see," the maid said again, "because your life, everything you built, is connected to what's in this room. And if you don't understand it soon, you may lose more than you think." Adrian's chest tightened. "Lose? What are you talking about?" The figure stepped forward again, and as the light fell across their face, Adrian gasped. The person wasn't entirely alive. Not like the rest of them. The skin was pale, almost translucent, eyes piercing in a way that seemed to look through him rather than at him. And then came the voice, a low, almost whispering tone that carried authority and warning at the same time. "You shouldn't have come back," it said. "Some doors once opened cannot be closed." Adrian felt the room spin. He glanced at the maid, whose expression had hardened. "You've brought him here," she said quietly, almost accusingly. "Now we have to face it together." Adrian's mind scrambled. Was this some supernatural occurrence? Or something tied to hidden family secrets he had never known? Every instinct screamed danger. Every memory whispered warning. And yet, some part of him, the part that had buried guilt for years, felt compelled to stay, compelled to face whatever this was. The shadow moved again, this time slowly circling the room, every step deliberate, as if marking territory, as if reminding Adrian of his own helplessness. The tapping he had heard before returned, faster, louder, echoing through the walls, sinking with the rapid thump of his own heart. Adrian's hand tightened around the edge of the bed, knuckles white, breath shallow. He could feel it, something far bigger than grief, far more dangerous than he could imagine, looming in the room. And he realized that the story he thought he knew about his mother, about her care, about this house, was only half the truth. And the second twist, the one he had never expected, was about to shatter everything he believed. The figure held the key higher, and Adrian suddenly understood. Unlocking this mystery could change not just his understanding of the past, but the very future he had been living for. The room seemed to pulse, waiting, breathing, daring him to move. And Adrian knew, with a sinking certainty, that the next choice he made would either reveal the ultimate truth or bury him in secrets that might never be forgiven. Adrian's hand shook as he reached for the key, every nerve in his body screaming to stop. The shadowy figure watched silently, its piercing eyes fixed on him, unblinking. The maid stepped closer, her voice steady but urgent. "It's time. You need to know the truth. Your mother's life, her secrets, everything that was hidden from you." Taking a deep breath, Adrian inserted the key into the small, ornate box sitting on the dresser. The lid clicked open, and inside lay a bundle of letters, old photographs, and a small, folded piece of cloth that smelled faintly of lavender. His mother's handwriting was unmistakable on the top letter. Adrian's eyes blurred as he read the first words. "Adrian, if you are reading this, it means you have returned and the time has come to understand." The letters revealed a story Adrian had never imagined. His mother had been protecting a secret for decades, one that involved not just her own family, but powerful people in business and politics who would do anything to keep it buried. The maid had been entrusted to guard this truth, to prepare Adrian for the moment he was ready to face it. The rituals, the careful tending of her room, the strange messages, all were designed to guide him, to awaken him to responsibilities he had ignored in his pursuit of wealth. As he absorbed the letters, the shadowy figure stepped closer, and the truth became even clearer. It wasn't a stranger. It was Adrian's late father's old business partner, someone who had disappeared years ago under mysterious circumstances. He had returned now, drawn to the same secret that Adrian's mother had protected, seeking the same control over the family's legacy. Adrian realized that the danger was real, and the stakes were higher than he could have imagined. The maid spoke firmly. "He's here to take what she left behind. You must stop him, Adrian, not with anger, not with fear, but with what she trusted you to do." Adrian felt a surge of clarity. All the fear, the guilt, the years of neglect, they had led him to this moment. He stood tall, looking directly at the figure. "I know what you want," he said, voice steady. "But her life, her choices, her legacy, they are not yours to control." For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. Then, with a flicker of hesitation, the figure stepped back, eyes narrowing, realizing that Adrian understood the depth of the truth his mother had protected. The tension was almost unbearable, every second stretching into eternity. And just as Adrian thought the danger had passed, the unexpected happened. The bundle of letters shifted in his hands on its own. The small lavender cloth unfolded, revealing a hidden compartment in the bottom of the box. Inside was a tiny USB drive, unmarked, humming softly with energy. Adrian froze. The letters had explained much, but this was something beyond what even his mother had written about. The maid whispered, her voice barely audible. "She left you a final choice. Whatever is on that drive will change everything you think you know." Adrian stared at the USB, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, knowing that the next step could reshape not only his understanding of the past, but also his future. The figure at the door watched him, tense, calculating, aware that the moment had shifted irreversibly. He took a slow breath, pressed the drive to his chest, and understood that the real story, the final secret, was only beginning. The room felt alive, the air thick with anticipation, and for the first time, Adrian realized that his mother's care, the maid's devotion, and the shadowy threat had all led him here for a reason far bigger than any of them could have imagined. The climax had been reached, but the ultimate revelation, the one that could change everything, was still waiting on the drive, humming softly, like a heartbeat of the past calling him forward. Adrian stared at the USB drive in his hands, the weight of it heavier than any sum of money he had ever held. The shadowy figure at the doorway hesitated, clearly unsure if they should act, and the maid remained quietly behind him, a calm anchor in the storm of fear and revelation. For a long moment, Adrian just breathed, feeling the pulse of the room, the lingering scent of lavender, and the presence of his mother in ways he had never thought possible. He finally spoke, voice steady but soft. "I'll see this through. Whatever's on this drive, I'll handle it the way she would have wanted." The shadow stiffened, then slowly retreated, realizing that Adrian's resolve was unshakable. He gave one last lingering look at Adrian before slipping out of the house, leaving only the quiet hum of the room and the soft ticking of the grandfather clock. Adrian's mother's presence seemed to fill the space, gentle, comforting, but firm, a reminder of everything she had taught her without ever speaking aloud. The maid moved closer and placed a hand on his shoulder. "She believed in you," she said. "That's why she left this for you. Not just to protect her secrets, but to guide you toward the person you were always meant to be." Adrian nodded slowly, tears forming in his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt a connection, not just to the mother he had loved, but to the legacy she had entrusted him with. The letters, the rituals, the strange messages, they weren't strange at all. They were her way of ensuring he understood what mattered most: responsibility, love, and integrity. He placed the USB drive on the dresser and carefully unpacked the letters once more. Each photograph, each note, each memory became a thread connecting him to the past, guiding him toward the future. He realized that his mother had not left him alone, even in death. She had prepared him for this moment, giving him a choice, a challenge, and a responsibility that transcended wealth and power. The maid began tidying the room, gently replacing the towels and smoothing the bed covers. Adrian watched her work quietly, reflecting on how much care and devotion had taken to maintain the space, to protect secrets that could have destroyed people if they fell into the wrong hands. It was a lesson in patience, love, and vigilance, a human lesson he would carry for the rest of his life. As the sun broke through the clouds outside, casting warm light across the room, Adrian felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The letters, the USB drive, the mysterious presence of his mother, they were all part of a story that had been waiting for him to arrive. And now that he was here, he could honor it. He turned to the maid and smiled faintly. "Thank you for everything." She nodded, her expression softening. She would be proud of you. And now, your life begins again, with understanding, with care, and with the courage to do what's right. Adrian took the USB drive, knowing that it held more than secrets. It held opportunity, responsibility, and a chance to make choices that mattered. The past was resolved, the threats were gone, and the legacy of his mother would continue through him. As he stepped out of the room, leaving the warm lavender-scented air behind, Adrian felt lighter, freer, and ready to face the world anew. He knew life would never be the same, but in a way, that was exactly how it should be. The house, the letters, the lessons, they were his inheritance, and now he understood their true value. The storm outside had passed, the air was calm, and the sunlight spilled across the garden, where flowers bloomed as if in quiet celebration. Adrian took a deep breath, feeling gratitude, hope, and clarity. For the first time in a long while, he smiled. Not at wealth, not at power, but the gift of understanding, love, and the extraordinary bond that could survive even beyond life itself. The story had reached its end, but its lessons, the power of care, devotion, and the courage to face what impossible, would remain with him forever.